there was no other option. I was
Okay.
like, the reason I'm training is to try to compete and try to like, go out there. That day, it was a little bit rough. Like as a kid, I got into like a lot of street fights myself.
Really?
Chris and I, we were walking, we just locked up the gym and we were walking to the train. One man like hitting a couple of women.
Anything coming up with you in the future with jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff.
Righty. Alex, brother, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Your gym in New York City, in Soho, Masterskya. Beautiful gym, man. I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you, man. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, of course, of course. I wanted to, get to know you a little more and kind of get your story out there and hear just about your backstory. So, like, I'd love to start before the jiu-jitsu days. You know what I'm saying? You said originally you were born in Ukraine. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh man, tell me about that. So, what age did you get? Did you come to the U.S. directly after Ukraine, or?
Yeah. So I was born in Ukraine, and when I was 6, my family and I, we came to America, and I grew up in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. So, what age did you get to Brooklyn?
6.
6 years old.
Yes,
Okay.
I've been there ever since.
Wow, 6 in Brooklyn. So you're pretty much a local here now.
Yeah.
Nice. And what reason did your parents come to the U.S.? I mean, I'm sure there's multiple reasons, but
Yeah, just to have a better life, primarily for me. They were waiting to have a child, and then after they have a child, to leave and have more opportunities, and so I'm very grateful to them, for bringing me here.
yeah, absolutely, for sure. So
Yeah.
6 years old, you get to the States. What does that look like? What does Brooklyn look like?
And I remember hating it. I remember just like not liking it. It was very different, from what I was, used to, in Ukraine. And like I didn't speak the language. I was like an ESL for the first couple of years, and I didn't have any friends. But then, shortly I got acclimated. Started making some friends. Ate McDonald's, and then fell in love.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
way, because they didn't have any McDonald's in Ukraine.
No.
Yeah, that's super funny. So 6 years old, you come. What age did you start training jiu-jitsu at?
So jiu-jitsu I started at 17.
Okay, got you.
But like when I was a kid, I was probably, I don't know, maybe like 10 years old, 8 years old. My dad watched Bloodsport with me.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw Bloodsport with him, like, I fell in love with Jean-Claude Van Damme. I was like, this is like my hero. And I begged my parents to take me to karate. So I remember, starting karate at probably like 10, 11.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for a couple of years. And then Eastern European parents and like Ukrainian, Russian parents like are very fond of judo.
Yeah.
So they put me into like a judo summer camp, and then I did judo for a couple of years. And both in karate and in judo, I was never really good at it.
Got you.
I liked the idea. Like I loved putting on the uniform, but I hated training.
Yeah.
So I kind of quit, and then did other stuff. Tried other hobbies, and then when I was a teenager, when I was 17, that's when I started jiu-jitsu, and then trained every day ever since.
No way. Interesting. So
Yeah.
what was it about jiu-jitsu versus judo that you liked more, that you kind of gravitated towards jiu-jitsu with?
It was a little bit spontaneous. Like I knew that I wanted to do something. And actually, I called my old judo coach, and I wanted to do judo again. And then he was like, "Listen, you can come, but I only have kids. I don't have anybody old enough for you to spar with."
Right?
Yeah, adults. Yeah. So then, I was watching UFC, and I was, really interested in that. So I was like, why don't I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu? And there was a gym not too far from my house, and so I just decided to join.
What gym did you start at?
Brooklyn Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Brooklyn. Oh, okay. And your head professor was Draculino?
No. In Brooklyn Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, the head coach was Gene Dunn.
Oh, Gene Dunn.
Gene
no
Dunn,
way.
yeah. He's like a very old school Henzo black belt.
Okay, yeah.
He's like very close to Danaher, and the second coach that I had was Brian Glick, who's now very well known.
Wow.
He's making a lot of content online as well.
Yeah, he's
so
killing it.
those are my like first 2 coaches.
Gotcha.
And then their gym was not heavily in favor of competing.
Okay.
Like they were more just like about training and self-defense.
Right.
And I just was like, I want to compete. I want to like go out there. And Shaolin just moved to America.
Right.
And I was like, I saw that he moved, and I saw his highlight, and I was like, I'm sold. So I was one of Shaolin's first students, and I joined Shaolin in about 2008.
So that's how you got linked up. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So what made you, decide, all right, I really want to compete in jiu-jitsu. It's not just a hobby for me anymore. Like it's something that I really want to see, where I stand versus everyone else.
Yeah, I just for me it was like there was no other option. I was like, the reason I'm training is to try to compete and try to like go out there. And like everybody else, like after I saw UFC, my dream was to be in the UFC as well.
Gotcha.
And to do MMA. Later, I had one MMA fight, but then my path just went into jiu-jitsu, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, that was, I think like many others, I was like, I want to do MMA. So that's kind of what led me into competing.
Got you. So who back in the day was like your UFC guy? Who would you watch? Who would you tune in for? Who were your favorite fighters?
I'm gonna give you some funny answers. My favorite fighter, well, I mean, I had so many, but I really love Tank Abbott.
Okay,
I used to love Tank Abbott, Chuck Liddell,
yeah, Iceman,
like old Tito Ortiz. I was a huge Pride fan. Sakuraba, obviously, Genki Sudo. There's so many. Igor Vovchanchyn was one of my favorites. I just like these like exciting fighters that would come out and brawl
and go forward, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exciting fights. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man. So you were 17 years old when you started jiu-jitsu, and then at what point were you like, man, I can might be able to make a career out of this? Like, it's not just like a hobby anymore. It's not just like something where I can compete and I'm not making money. Like, at what point did you see where like I could make a life out of this?
Yeah. That came a little bit later. Like New York City is like a very hard place to like make it financially and like make a living, period.
For sure, man.
And I graduated Brooklyn College and I had like a degree and I started looking for jobs and I'm like, why don't I just like work in the gym? So I asked Shaolin at that point, I was like, can I just work here? And he gave me a job and I was kind of a manager and teaching classes and kind of like doing everything around the gym. And that was like my entry into, working in a martial arts gym. And then after I did, I was like, it's pretty, not, I don't want to say easy by any means, but I'm like, it's manageable. And, here I am today.
It's low stress, right? I think that's like what a lot of people gravitate towards is like when you're working and you're teaching, it's a lot of fun and it doesn't feel like work almost, It feels like more play, and that's where like you can kind of say it's easy. It's not easy, but it's fun, right? And it makes you enjoy like showing up every day.
100%.
Yeah. Teaching school. What age did you start teaching at, or what belt?
Like pretty early on, because like I was one of Shaolin's first students, and I came to him. I was already a purple belt when I came to him.
Gotcha.
I got my purple belt like really quickly. So when he was still fighting, so when he would travel, he would ask me to cover classes. So
no way.
Little by little, that's why I started teaching.
Did you ever travel with him when he was fighting? Or
no, unfortunately
that?
not. Yeah,
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, I didn't. Yeah.
You said you had one MMA fight. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I wish I started MMA a little bit earlier.
Right.
I got carried away with jiu-jitsu. I just started doing all sport jiu-jitsu. And then I only got my MMA fight when I was a black belt already.
Okay.
So because of that, I had a really hard time getting fights.
Because you were a black belt.
Because I was a black belt, and
right.
I wanted to, like, my coaches and we wanted to have a few like amateur fights before I went pro,
right.
instead of going pro right away. And because of that, it was really, really difficult. So
right.
A lot of people weren't taking fights just because I was a black belt, or I would get fights and then they would pull out like last second.
Gotcha.
And then I had like one guy named Turpal who was like, I'll do it, and like super tough. I won the fight, but that night I went to the hospital to get like stitched up on my eye.
Oh wow!
So it was like way easier on TV.
Yeah, it was a war, huh?
Yeah, it was tough.
How'd you win the fight? By submission?
By submission, yeah.
Nice. What'd you hit him with?
With a straight arm lock.
A straight arm lock?
Yeah.
That's good. Hey, trusty, right?
Yep.
So speaking of subs, you're like highly known for the G roll, which is kind of a variation on how to finish the triangle. Would you say, or like?
The G roll, there's many. It's mostly a sweeping system from half guard.
Right.
Yeah, and I play around with a lot of stuff. Like I do it from like bottom of headquarters, bottom of 50-50,
right.
Within a triangle to flip somebody.
Right. That's what I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, that's probably what you saw.
Right.
But yeah, it was just it's mainly from the half guard, and like in Shaolin school, like everybody is like Shaolin was teaching a lot of pressure passing. And he would teach this sweep called the Shaolin sweep.
Gotcha.
So kind of blending everything together, and for my love of kimuras, I kind of came up with this G roll position.
Yeah. Would you say the kimura is your favorite sub?
I think so. Yeah. I really love the kimura. Yeah.
What about it?
My first coach, Gene Dunn, like he would teach it a lot, and then I liked it when I saw it, and then also like I was like 17, and Gene, he's a really big guy, and I would look at him and I'm like, man, this guy is like a god.
Yeah.
And then when I went home, I'm on on the computer like looking up, all right, who's his coach, and I saw his coach was Renzo Gracie, and I'm like, all right, so this is my coach's coach. This guy must be like something else.
Yeah.
And then Sakuraba, I found Sakuraba through my searches.
Oh yeah, the king of kimuras, right?
And then I'm like, this guy beat my coach's coach with this move, and then my coach really likes it. I'm like, there's something to it,
right.
So I started doing it since white belt, and then when I came to Shaolin, I was the white and blue belt at that time. I was a purple, but I was still a kid. I was like 18, 19 years old. I was like, "What's your favorite submission?" I remember asking him this like with a lot of enthusiasm.
Right.
And I thought he was gonna say the arm triangle because that's what he finished a lot of fights for and is known for. But he said it was the kimura. So I was like, I'm gonna keep working on it. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So for that reason, I don't finish it usually as a submission, but I love using it, for sweeps, for guard passes, to turn into arm bars, to take the back, for triangles. So I like to use it just like as a system in a whole.
It's a position, right?
Yeah,
Too. Yeah, like
exactly,
you said, a
exactly,
system. Like the Kimura is a whole system in itself. But yeah, what people don't realize, I think, is like the Kimura is a position too. You can use it,
exactly.
like you said, to sweep and do a whole
Yeah,
versatile amount of things for sure. That's
yeah,
cool. So you said Jean-Claude Van Damme is kind of what introduced you
yeah.
into the martial arts stuff. What about that captured your, your attention at a young age?
Him doing the splits, him getting the lady, him, winning the kumite, to a 8 or 10 year old kid.
Yeah.
What else is better?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So
He's kind of like the idol back then when you're coming up looking at martial arts and stuff
yeah.
like that.
And I feel like I love Bruce Lee, but when I was watching like Bruce Lee movies, I think as a lot of kids, right? Like just like how aesthetic wise, how he looks, right?
Mhm.
I couldn't relate to him, and I was like a chubby white kid, and I'm like, all right, Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think maybe one day I can look like that guy.
Yeah,
So I think probably it was something to do with that too, but that's why I gravitated towards him
yeah, no,
more
for
than some
sure.
others. Yeah,
That's so funny. You kind of related with him a little bit more,
exactly. Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure. So talking about competition and stuff like that, I think mindset is a huge part of competition.
yeah.
When you're younger, your mindset going into competition, I feel like sometimes can just be like, I'm going to go in there and rip this guy's head off, or you don't really have like a you do have a plan, but you have a lot of testosterone and a lot of energy
Yeah.
going into it. How has your mindset changed going into competitions from being young and then kind of aging and getting more experience throughout the sport?
Yeah, it's interesting. We just had a long talk with one of a newer student here, and he's younger, he's in his early 20s, and what he was saying yesterday, he goes, I'm gonna win these tournaments, and I'm gonna prove to everyone that I'm like a new person and who I am and stuff like that. And I was like telling him like, no, like you don't need to prove anything to anybody. Prove it to yourself. Forget about me. Forget about all your old friends or whoever.
Yeah.
Like this is for you. You're competing for you. And he refused to listen to me, which is fine. He was like, no, it's I'm gonna prove it to everybody. I'm like, all right, let's prove it to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I pulled back is because I was him at 1.2. Where when I would go, I'm like, no, I'm gonna prove to my coach. I'm gonna prove to my mom. I'm gonna prove to my friends to.
Right.
That girl that rejected me in high school, I'm gonna prove to all of them that now, like, I made something of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And later, as I got more mature, I realized that was the wrong mindset, and that I needed to compete simply for me. And even when I opened up the gym, I always had a lot of pressure. Like, oh, I'm competing for my students to represent the gym, blah 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 blah, and I would get so nervous and so anxious because of that. And it took me a long time to just like put that away. And even I don't compete that much anymore. Like maybe once a year, something like that. But when I do compete, I don't even tell anybody. I don't make like a big scene about it, and because it's simply for me.
Right.
And
That's good.
yeah, that's kind of the approach of that. So it's funny how it kind of changed over the years.
Yeah, I think that's like something that kind of happens as you get older. You realize that like, okay, maybe I don't have to prove myself to everybody. It's just about how I see myself. You know what I'm saying? It's less about what everybody else thinks about you and more about what you think of yourself, right? And so, kind of changes your mindset going into stuff like that. Speaking of, mindset, diet has a big thing to do with sports too, and nutrition. So when you were a kid, what was your diet like? When you were younger, what did you eat? Like coming from, Ukraine to the United States at 6, what were you eating then?
It's people find it hard to believe because like now I walk around like 150, 155. But when I was a kid, I was actually really fat. I was like a big kid. And because like, I tried every sport, but the sports that I like, or the activities I like the most were ping pong and art.
Really?
So I like the ones that, were not too physical. So I was like a chubby kid. Like the jeans that I would buy were called husky jeans.
Right.
I like husky jeans. And when I started jiu-jitsu, I was like, before jiu-jitsu, I was into like weightlifting.
Okay.
And I read online, and I had this pen pal friend that was like, you need to eat 2 grams of protein for every pound that you have. I'm like, okay, so I have to eat like 300
grams.
I think that's what they say.
I thought it was 1.
1?
I've heard 1, I've heard 1.5. 2 grams would be a
maybe
lot.
2 grams. Yeah, maybe I've gotten wrong information, or this was like 2005.
Got you.
I think things have definitely got smarter since then. Even.
Yeah, for sure.
Whatever it was, but I was like, I gotta get like a few hundred grams of protein a day.
Right.
And I remember seeing, and this is like right now it sounds so funny, but it was very true. I remember seeing that a double cheeseburger was like 48 grams of protein, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna eat 2 of those. So I was like eating like 2 double cheeseburgers, after I would weight lift. And yeah, I just got like kind of like husky and fat. And when I started jiu-jitsu, I was 185 pounds. and so I was like 5'7", 185,
Wow.
and I was like kind of heavy. And then just like I started training every single day, twice a day in many days, and then I just like lost like 40 pounds within the first, I don't know, maybe 6 months.
Wow.
So, and then I kind of kept that weight, until today, which is almost 20 years later.
Are you still eating double cheeseburgers every day?
Just once a month.
Just once a month? You got your
Yeah,
cheat
just
day
once a
every month?
Yeah, my monthly cheat. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I don't eat them, unfortunately, anymore.
Yeah.
Taste wise, unfortunately, but
yeah, for sure.
For your body, it's a good thing.
Yeah, especially with longevity and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. What's your diet like nowadays?
My diet is like, on a cleanliness level of 1 to 10, I would say it's like a 6.5, 7. I'm not gonna say it's like the cleanest diet of all time. I just try to just eat like unprocessed foods as much as I can, and
Good.
just try to stay as healthy as I can. I usually eat twice a day.
Nice.
I skip breakfast usually, and then have lunch and dinner.
You feel like skipping breakfast gives you a little bit more energy in the morning, allows you to kind of wake up a little bit, or what's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah.
You hear so much different stuff like intermittent fasting, or no, eat 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes. So
I tried kind of everything, but just ever since my whole life, I never had an appetite in the morning, so I just kind of went with it. And then I heard about intermittent fasting, and I was like, oh, that sounds great. That sounds like what I'm doing already. So
Right.
kind of naturally happened.
You're like, I've been doing this for years, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Right on. So what about recovery? What type of recovery stuff do you do? Jiu-Jitsu is, super hard on the body, aches and pains in the neck and the joints and all that good stuff. What kind of stuff do you do for recovery? Stretching and mobility stuff?
So we do like stretching, and in every single class, and I do the warm up in every single class. So we do like a stretching every single day, and I usually do it like multiple times a day because of that. But I love like saunas and bathhouses. I go to those. Recently, I started to do this like float tank. Really love that, like sensory deprivation.
Right.
I did the Wim Hof 10-week course. I was doing like ice showers for a little bit, and then I stopped. But once in a while, I still like to do that. And honestly, I just try to make sure I get 7-8 hours of sleep every night, and I feel like that does me good.
Yeah, stretching here and there, making sure that you sleep well is crucial too, for sure. Any yoga or anything like that? Any type of Pilates or extracurriculars other than jiu-jitsu that you're interested in nowadays, at least physically?
Yeah, I did yoga for several years before, and then the warm that we do in class is kind of yoga-esque, so that's the stretching that we do.
That's awesome.
But these days I don't go to like yoga as I did maybe 8-10 years ago.
Yeah, I feel you. Different times for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. New York City's definitely a little different from where I'm from. I'm from San Diego. What was it like, growing up in New York? And was it like when you grew up in Brooklyn back then, was it a nice area to grow up in? Were you walking around the streets alone as a kid, or did you have to have someone there with you? Tell me a little bit about like what New York was like back then.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember like traveling once, and I think it was with Costa Rica, and I met some locals there, or actually I met some people that were also traveling and locals, and they were like, "Where are you from?" And I was like, "I'm from Brooklyn," and they were like, "Oh my God!" And they were like so like wowed that I was from Brooklyn. I'm like, Brooklyn to me is like not a desirable place to live,
right?
Because the area that I grew up in, it wasn't like a rough area, but it wasn't like a nice area either. I grew up in like Flatbush, Dittmas Park.
Okay.
These days it's really nice. There's a lot of new restaurants and stuff like that. But back in the day, it was a little bit rough. There was like some gangs. There was a lot of fights. Like as a kid, I got into like a lot of street fights myself.
Really?
Yeah, just like
before, after jiu-jitsu.
Mostly before.
Really?
Mostly before, yeah.
Oh,
even after a couple of times, unfortunately. But I don't know. It's kind of like New York is, I think, a little bit rougher than a lot of other areas.
Yeah.
Especially when I travel. When I travel, I'm like, I don't feel tension on the train, or no one is looking at me, while I'm walking on the street.
Right.
It's a little calmer. You're a little bit more on edge in New York, but I kind of like that about New York too.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's got an energy. It does, right? Yeah. It's got an energy to it. You've gotten in street fights before. Have you had to use your jiu-jitsu in any street fights?
A couple times, yeah.
Really? In New York City?
In New York City, yeah.
Wow, no kidding. People just walking up to you and kind of messing with you, or people messing with other people, or
there was like one situation. Actually, it's a very close friend of mine. His name is Chris Alfonso, and our old school, it was in Bushwick, and Bushwick is like a pretty rough area.
Gotcha.
It's getting gentrified, but it's still like really rough. And Chris and I, we were walking. We just locked up the gym, and we were walking to the train, and we saw like one man like hitting a couple of women, and we were just like shocked at what was happening. We couldn't even believe what we were looking at, and like we're trying to just assess the situation as best as we could. And before we know it, the guy just like runs away, and then both of us had a feeling that he was going to return. So we kind of crossed the street, and Chris pretended to smoke to kind of wait to see what was going to happen. And we, lo and behold, the guy ended up coming back. So Chris and I both had to like restrain the guy, so that he wouldn't continue hitting them, because he was running back to get them after he saw that we were no longer there.
Gotcha. He saw you guys went away, and then he came back to proceed doing whatever he was doing.
Yeah.
And so, did you guys confront him and go up to him, or did you start talking to him? Or
no, so he was running, which we assumed to attack them again,
right?
Because they were still standing. They were like shocked. Obviously, they were still standing in the area. And what we found out later from the police is that he was hitting his girlfriend or wife, and then there was a lady that was just walking, and she tried to stop it. So then he just started to hit both of them.
Oh man!
And then that's what we walked in on. And then we just like kind of ran at him, and Chris ended up just kind of like shoulder checking him, like tackling him essentially. Not a very clean double leg, but but it worked. And then I got on top of him just to kind of hold him down, and then he was trying to fight against me. So I used a guillotine to hold him down until, and the ladies already called the police. There was like kind of a little bit of scene. So, and then we just waited till the police to come there, and then they whispered to me to say that I didn't use a guillotine if anybody asks, that I just did a seatbelt. So that's the story.
No kidding. They told you, who told you that?
The police, because you're not allowed to choke someone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that could get you in trouble actually.
So they said that say it was a seatbelt instead.
If anybody calls or anybody asks,
they knew the difference between a guillotine and a seatbelt. The police.
I think I told them that.
Okay, gotcha.
Because they're like, "What happened exactly?" So I was like, I did a high elbow guillotine. I'm kidding. I didn't tell them but I was like, I got him in a guillotine, blah 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 blah. And then,
right.
I even told them, I said, we have a martial arts school actually in the area,
right,
etc. And then they were, and then the next day a detective called me, and he was like, what happened? I was like, I just restrained them until the police came, and that was sufficient.
Wow. That's crazy, man. Scary stuff. You never really know.
Yeah, it's a lot. Man. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, a lot of crazy things.
For sure. Yeah, you never know when you're gonna walk around and see crazy stuff around here, but it keeps you on your toes, and it's a good energy too.
Yeah.
Right. Do you watch UFC at all nowadays?
I do, not as much as I did before.
Yeah.
Now I just I watch like sport jiu-jitsu, but UFC I watch sporadically here and there.
Yeah, we have crazy fights coming up this weekend. That's why I was curious.
Yeah, who is fighting this
Islam Makhachev fights.
Oh, cool.
Armin, so you can. It's a good wrestling matchup.
Cool.
Yeah, two really cool wrestling backgrounds. But you watch sport jiu-jitsu, you said?
Yeah.
Did you watch this last CJI and ADCC
of course,
stuff?
Yeah,
of course. What do you think about all that stuff?
I love both of it. I love ADCC. And I think both of them are elevating the sport. I think CGI is really good. I don't really think that jiu-jitsu is a spectator sport. I think CGI is phenomenal to help fighters make money, make a living, and stuff like that. I'm okay even if only jiu-jitsu people watch jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's a little bit hard to explain, but I really like the format. I like the rounds, and I like that there's like a ref decision as opposed to points or subs. So I think that's really cool. And ADCC, I just wish they're a little bit more fair, and they treat fighters a little bit better. And then they also provide a large platform for people to showcase their skills. And I'm happy with both organizations.
Yeah, it's cool. Competition's good. I feel like, right? Competition breeds success. That's what they always say. And it's like if there wasn't competition in jiu-jitsu, then people wouldn't be pushed to get better. And like you said, pay the athletes more too. I guess that was the whole thing behind the CJI was the athlete pay, kind of increasing the exposure and all that good stuff, which is good. I think, jiu-jitsu athletes definitely need to get paid more and need more exposure too. So
100%.
We'll see. They say, Craig says CJI 2 will come. And
let's keep it going.
Yeah, let's keep it going. Sure. Will you think you'll ever attend or anything like that?
I would love to. Yeah. I think what he's doing is so good for the sport, and he's such a funny guy. So I think it's great.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
What's anything coming up with you in the future with jiu-jitsu? Seminars or anything any competitions that you're gonna do or?
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff. I'm working on this thing called the Sensay App. So what we're doing is we are working with heart rate and collecting metrics to help people see how they're training.
Okay.
And also, my goal is to get students better quicker. So the app started with me just giving students goals. Like, for example, if you're one of my students, I would say, and you're new, let's say, I would say your goal is to get armbar from close guard 10 times. So when you roll, you're not just like going for random moves. You're trying to get to close guard, and you're trying to go for an armbar from close guard. And every time you get it, you kind of check it off. It was okay, but we found that some students wouldn't want to log it in, and they would forget, etc. So it kind of morphed into what we're doing now, where students are wearing heart rate monitors, and we have different zones that they can be in. And when they're rolling, they could see, are they exerting enough energy or not. Because some of my students, I noticed, like, they kind of coast too much, where they're not pushing themselves too much, or like newer students, their heart rate's always max, and they're getting too tired too quickly. And we're trying to collect metrics with it, and we have a lot of cool ideas with it. We're going to be doing like super fights, where when two people are fighting, you can see the heart rate of each person.
No way.
Yeah, so we already have that, and we're about to test it.
That's going to be really cool. Have you talked to Smooth Comp potentially about kind of incorporating that into their software? Because
not yet, but we're talking to some organizations about doing it. We're going to do it in-house.
Awesome.
And after that, we want to see, and it's also going to be interesting just to kind of see how fighters recover, see how much they're exerting themselves. So yeah, it's super exciting.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So the Sensay app is called, right?
Sensay app, yeah.
Are you planning on releasing it to the public in the future or anything?
Yeah,
like that?
It's actually it's live in the Google and Apple Store.
Is it really?
Yeah. So
no
yeah,
kidding.
anybody can download it.
Is it free to download?
It's free to download. Yep.
Oh wow! Go download it. Go get the Sensay app right now. Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, we're doing that. So that's a lot of fun. We've been working hard on that.
That's really cool.
So yeah, I work with this company called BJJ Camp XP. And I love it. Like Colombia is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been.
So I've heard.
So I'm doing a camp in the end of March for them. And then we have like the students here. We compete in all the local tournaments, and for the big IBGFs we travel as well. So we have some students here preparing for the GI Pan American Championships, and we have a lot of local stuff that I'm helping everyone prepare for as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have the gym too, which is like, I'm sure takes up a lot of your time.
Yeah,
and you have some affiliates now as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a bunch of affiliates too. Yeah.
Where are the affiliates at? They're all over the place, right?
Yeah. So the first affiliate was actually kind of nuts. It was an online friend of mine in Iran. He had he was in Iran. His name is Sam, and he just he didn't have a coach, and he was affiliated with RS for a short amount of time, and he just needed some help. So him and I connected online, and we talked online forever, and he became the first affiliate.
Wow.
And after that, we got an affiliate in Montreal, which is a really close friend of mine. One in Catskills, named PJ. He's a black belt from New York City that moved over there to open up a gym.
That's awesome.
Another one named Verge in Hudson Valley. Now we also have a couple in Brooklyn as well. So we have one in like Sunset Park with Cal, and then we have one in Bushwick with Super Dave.
It's the Masterskya takeover here.
We're trying.
I love it, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that, like I said, it takes up most of your time. What are like the kind of the back end stuff that most people don't see as a gym owner, that you have to do? Because basically what they think is you purchase a building, you pay rent, and you teach, and that's it, right? So talk to me about kind of what goes in on the back end of owning a gym and kind of running this business.
It's so much, it's a lot of administrative work, right? Account management and stuff like that. But it's also like here, I feel like the reason we have some success is because we're like a real community, like we're a real family, and like I know almost every single student. The reason I say almost is because some students, they only go to like the 7 a.m. classes that I don't teach,
right?
Or they go to some classes that I don't attend. But I know almost everybody, and the coaches, we're all like very united, and we know about what everybody is doing, what everybody needs, and so if somebody's missing from class, if someone is injured, if someone's not improving, we're always trying to stay on top of everybody, and always trying to see. Like the way that I taught like 7-8 years ago, and the way I structure classes is very different than today. We've been adding, different ways and taking things away and adding things in. Like even when we started, I did the same thing as my coach, Shaolin, where I would do long warm-ups, so then we just decided to discard those long warm-ups altogether.
Wow.
So now like every class we do open drilling where students get to drill whatever they want to as part of their warm-up.
Wow.
So we do that. And then recently, following the trend of like ecological training, one of the coaches here named Oliver, he loves it, so he experiments in some of his classes with it, and he's been like studying it. We don't do that. I believe in traditional training has a lot of value as well, as been proven already, but we added like drilling with resistance. So like when we drill now, we're like adding different resistance levels to it. So we're always kind of modifying. And my goal and this what the Sensay app is also helping with is to try to get people better quicker.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's everyone's goal, right? In jiu-jitsu. It's like obviously to have fun and create a relationship with your peers, but to get better, right? That's the
exactly,
goal.
exactly.
Fast too. No one wants to get better slow.
Even
though sometimes that's what it takes, right? Especially once you get to the higher levels at black belt and stuff like that. I feel like the increments are a lot slower than they are at white belt. But what is your personal now? Like, do you train a lot of gi? Do you train a lot of no gi? Is it mostly, you're favoring one? Do you teach a lot of one or the other?
Yeah, so in Shaolin, it was like 90% gi. We
Right.
trained like no gi like once a week. And then when I opened up the gym, we were like maybe 70-30 gi, no gi. And then now it's kind of switched. And I feel like just no gi became like a new toy and, something that I fell in love with. And even in the gi, I never really made too many grips. Like I would kind of play, overhooks, underhooks. I would kind of almost do no gi in the gi.
Right.
And I always like loved leg locks and stuff like that, even before they were popular. So no-gi was just kind of like a natural direction for me.
Mm-hmm.
So these days, the school here is like 60-70% no-gi to gi ratio. But we still train in the gi and we still, pay respect to the tradition. We try to stay on top of the trends in the gi as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I would say.
That's awesome, man. I have 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
The first one is, who are your jiu-jitsu heroes? The people that you look up to in the sport, other than yourself, obviously. The people that you kind of model your game after, or that you model your life after, you know what I'm saying? People that you really think are good role models, not only on the mats, but off the mats as well.
Yeah, to be honest, like when I look at a jiu-jitsu person, I just look at who they are, and that's like a jiu-jitsu athlete. I can't say that I model like any like things outside of my life on a person that's in jiu-jitsu. Like I love reading and I love like learning about different people and just like being inspired by people that are outside of jiu-jitsu as well. But in jiu-jitsu, like the 3 people that I think are very influential to me have been both of the Mendes brothers. I think they revolutionized the sport in many ways. Eddie Cummings, I think, is the single person responsible for popularizing no-gi jiu-jitsu, and kind of leading the way for everybody. And I really like Augusto Tinquinho Mendes. He's one of the GOATs, and he's somebody that not a lot of people talk about. And he beat all the best in their respective sports. And I watched a lot of footage on him.
Shout out to Tank. Thank you, Tank. Love you, brother.
Yeah,
that was my first professor.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, Professor Tanquinho. Shout out.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Arizona for 8 months. I started at white belt under Tanquinho over at headquarters, Full Fighter headquarters. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think just people don't talk about him that much, but he's the GOAT to me.
Right. Yeah. ADCC champion, IBJJF in the gi and no gi. I mean, it's like.
And he beat all the best.
Right. Yeah. 100%. That's awesome, man. Yes. And then last question for you. If you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, 3 separate dinners, who would they be?
3 separate dinners.
Yeah. I know it's a little bit putting you on the spot, but
yeah, let's have fun with it. Let's put Marcus Aurelius.
Oh yes, absolute stoicism, baby. Let's go.
Marcus
The father.
Let's put Tupac
Shakur. Let's go.
Tupac Shakur.
I think he'd be on my list too.
We looks like we got a lot in common.
Absolutely.
And let's put Robin Williams.
Robin Williams. There you go.
Williams,
wow. Yeah. Those are Mrs. Doubtfire. Shout out.
So unfortunately, 3 that are dead, but
but 3 great people too.
3 very different, but 3 interesting people.
That's what you like. Keep a little bit of mixture, right? Variety. Yeah. Awesome. Alex, tell everyone where they can find you.
So you can find me right here. So we're at Masterskya. We're in Chinatown, Manhattan, right on Canal Street between Broadway and Lafayette. And pretty easy to find these days. Before we were Speakeasy, but not anymore. So you can look at us on Google Maps.
For sure. And your Instagram, all your social medias.
Alex Masterskya.
Awesome. Follow him, guys. Alex Masterskya. Appreciate you, Alex.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. Thank you, brother.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you. Yeah. You're the man.